Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are discussing about Ashtanga Yoga, the yoga of meditation or Dhyana Yoga. The 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita describes some specific details about the practice of Ashtanga Yoga. Lord Krishna describes this to Arjuna. Lord Krishna says, a yogi should always try to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Self. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and possessiveness. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground. Then cover it with deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and should practice yoga by controlling the mind and the senses, purifying the heart and fixing the mind on one point. And we should remember this yoga of meditation depends on being able to sit very firmly and actually not allow the mind to wander, not allow external distractions to disturb the meditation. And it is also to be remembered that Ashtanga Yoga takes a lot of time to go through the 8 steps, one step after another, to come to the stage of actually being able to do proper meditation takes a long time. The scriptures say that the author of Ramayana, Valmiki Rishi, he performed meditation for 60,000 years. So somebody might say, how was it possible for him to do meditation for 60,000 years? Well, Valmiki Rishi lived in Satya Yuga, a former age, when the average duration of life in that age was 100,000 years. So out of 100,000 years, Valmiki Rishi spent 60,000 years doing meditation before he reached perfection. So it is definitely meant, this Ashtanga Yoga is meant for people who lived in Satya Yuga. Besides that, the stringent rules have to be followed. Just like here it is said, one should go to a secluded place, because it is not possible to do meditation in a place where there is so much of noise or so many other distractions. No. That's why they would go to a secluded place. Now, Srila Prabhupada explains, sacred place refers to places of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis go to the leave home and reside in sacred places like Prayag, Mathura, Vrindavan, Rishikesh, Haridwar, and in solitude they practice yoga where the sacred rivers like Yamuna, Ganga, and other such rivers flow. But nowadays people think they can stay in a big city, attend some yoga classes, and in that way practice yoga. That may be beneficial for getting some health benefit, but it is not useful for self-realization. It is not useful for connecting ourselves with the Supreme Lord. Then Krishna further says, one should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line. Stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. So, the aim of this Ashtanga Yoga is to meditate on the form of the Supreme Lord Krishna within one's heart. And Krishna is the ultimate goal of life. That's very clearly explained here. Now, it is also told, Brahmachari vrate sthitaha. That means one has to practice celibacy. Now, such rules cannot be relaxed if at all one wants to achieve success in self-realization by following this path of Ashtanga Yoga. Then it is said, by practicing control of the body, mind and activities, the mystic transcendentalist attains to the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. Our present existence is called material existence. We are in the material world. But the aim of yoga practice is to attain the kingdom of God in the spiritual world. And that is possible by practicing control of body, mind and activities. So, the goal of this yoga system is not some good health or some curing some diseases. No, that's not the real goal of yoga system, this Ashtanga Yoga practice. Then Lord Krishna also briefly describes the regulation or the restrictions. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or sleeps too little. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, working and recreation can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. One can become free from all miseries by simply practicing regulation of four things: eating, sleeping, and working and recreation. Then Krishna says, when the yogi by practice of yoga disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to have attained yoga. This is the steady state where the yogi is able to fix his mind without the mind wandering or wavering. Further, Krishna says, as a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist whose mind has been controlled remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Yogi has to become completely immersed in such meditation. without any distraction, absolutely no distraction. Then finally, Krishna describes the state of perfection. It is called samadhi or trance. In this state of perfection, when one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities, that is the beginning of the stage of perfection. This is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness and enjoys himself through transcendental senses. See the result of yoga practice. In the perfection, stage of perfection, no longer will the yogi be interested in any ordinary material happiness. Material happiness is described in the Bhagavad Gita as something that is flickering. It is actually momentary and it is highly conditional. On the other hand, transcendental happiness is unconditional. Just like the yogi, by controlling the senses and the mind and the body, becomes completely aloof from all external conditions, external circumstances, external situations. And the yogi is in a secluded place, so such a yogi has nothing to do with family affairs or the happenings in the world around him, nothing to do with any of those things, not concerned or any way bothered by any of those situations. So it is very, very important that the yogi follows all these restrictions or all these rules and regulations. So the yogi is able to enjoy a boundless transcendental happiness. It is actually unlimited happiness. It's not some meager material happiness. No. Further, Krishna says, established thus, the yogi never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. The yogi is able to experience transcendental happiness to such a degree that he thinks there is no greater gain, and he is completely fixed in the truth of the self in relationship with the Supreme Self. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. That means the yogi has become completely detached from all material conditions. Therefore, any material condition is not an obstacle for such a yogi who is absorbed completely in meditation and has attained the state of boundless transcendental happiness or the state of samadhi. Finally, Krishna says in this section, this indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. All the miseries that anybody experiences in this world is due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. Dukkha yoni means the source of misery. What is that? Samsparshaja bhoga. Whatever we desire to enjoy through sense enjoyment, that is simply, according to the Bhagavad Gita, source of different kinds of miseries. So, if you want freedom from miseries, you want freedom from material contact of your senses. And that is possible if the senses are completely controlled and fixed in meditation upon the Supreme Lord within the heart. Then Krishna further explains, one should engage in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith. As I mentioned, it takes time, these different steps to be practiced and perfected, one step after another. It requires patience. That's why Krishna particularly is stressing undeviating determination and faith. Faith, because such a long time one has to go on and on and on and on. Not give up in between. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of false ego. We should know that due to our misunderstanding in terms of who I am, generally a person thinks I am this body or I am the mind. So identifying either with the body or the mind, there are so many material desires that are born of such a conception. The demands are there. Demands of the senses, demands of the mind, demands of the intelligence. So a yogi should give up all such material desires. That means such a yogi has to be very, very serious about the goal of self-realization. And the goal of self-realization should be very, very strong in his heart. Only then he can give up all other desires. And one should control all the senses on all the sides by the mind. The mind is a central point of all senses. The senses are centered around the mind. Therefore, all the senses should be completely controlled. In the second chapter of Gita, Lord Krishna says, even one of the senses roaming on the sense objects can carry away the mind. So one has to be completely able to control all the senses of action, the senses of perception, and the mind. The mind is this inner sense. It is the, sometimes it's called the sixth sense. So the senses and the mind should be completely controlled. And Krishna further says, from whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering nature, one must certainly withdraw the mind and bring it back under the control of the self. The mind has to be withdrawn. Even if it goes away, one has to bring it back. This happens quite often for any yogi. The mind wanders, and that is totally unfavorable for yoga. That's an obstacle. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, there is a very nice example of a yogi who got deviated while practicing severe austerities. So I shall narrate this particular story from the Bhagavatam. It's in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam. This is the story of one Saubhari Muni. There was a king by name Mandhata, who was a very powerful ruler of the entire world. He was the cause of fear for other thieves and rogues who caused anxiety for people in general. Because they feared him, this king was also known as Trasadasyu. He was able to subdue all the rogues and thieves. And by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, he was so powerful that when he ruled, the entire world. There was no second ruler in the whole world. He was the only ruler. It is described that the Emperor Mandhata, knowing the principles of self-realization, he performed many sacrifices to please the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and also he gave a lot of charity to the Brahmanas, and thus he performed yajna. This Mandhata, he begot 3 sons and 50 daughters in the womb of his wife Bindumati. All the 50 daughters of Mandhata married the great sage Saubhari Muni as their husband. Now, Saubhari Muni is mentioned as a yogi. How did he become deviated? That is explained here. That Saubhari Muni had performed severe austerities, and in order to avoid external disturbances, he went deep in the water of the river Yamuna in a place near Mathura, and he was sustaining himself by mystic power, that he was able to remain under the water and he was able to breathe, or rather he had suspended his breath, and he was engaged in concentration of the mind upon the form of the Lord in the heart. Suddenly, while he was doing such practice, he had not yet reached that stage of meditation, he was still trying to practice. He saw a pair of fish engaged in sexual affairs within the water. Thus, he perceived the pleasure of sex life, and induced by this, he came out of the river Yamuna and went to the king Mandhata, who was ruling from Mathura, and begged for one of the king's daughters. In response to this request, the king said, "O Brahmana, any of my daughters may accept any husband according to her personal selection." So this king Mandhata was very intelligent. He avoided this sage, Rishi, Saubhari Muni by just telling that my daughters can select their own husband. He had 50 daughters, so he thought that let them do their own selection. Saubhari Muni thought, I am now feeble because of my old age. My hair has become grey, my skin is slack, and my head always trembles. Besides, I am a yogi. Therefore, women do not like me. Since the king has thus rejected me, I shall reform my body in such a way as to be desirable even for celestial women, what to speak of daughters of worldly kings. Thereafter, using his mystic power, Saubhari Muni became a young and beautiful, handsome person. And when he went to the king's palace in Mathura, King Mandhata's palace, the messenger of the palace immediately took him inside the residential quarters of the princesses, the 50 daughters of King Mandhata. And these daughters of King Mandhata, the princesses, were living in a very opulent palace. All the 50 princesses then accepted him as their husband, although he was only one man. All of them got attracted to him. In fact, they could not recognize that he was the same yogi who had come before he transformed himself into a handsome young person. Thereafter, the princesses, being attracted by Saubhari Muni, gave up their sisterly relationship and quarreled among themselves. Each one of them was contending, "This man is just suitable for me, not for you." In this way, there ensued a great disagreement. Because Saubhari Muni was expert in chanting mantras perfectly, he used this power of mantra in creating an opulent home with garments, ornaments, properly dressed and decorated maidservants, varieties of parks with clear water lakes and gardens with fragrant varieties of flowers, birds chirping and bees humming in the gardens, surrounded by professional singers. Saubhari Muni's home was amply provided valuable beds, seats, ornaments, arrangements for bathing, varieties of perfumes, sandalwood creams, palatable dishes, flower garlands. Thus, surrounded by opulent paraphernalia, the Muni engaged in family affairs with his numerous wives. So somebody will wonder, how is this possible? So Srila Prabhupada explains that just as a person earns a lot of money and spends that money for building a huge mansion and decorates and furnishes and engages so many servants, similarly, using mantra chanting, power of mantra chanting, one can actually create a palatial mansion, one can generate so many conveniences and comforts. But we should always remember that when the yogi who has done a lot of austerities, when he employs the power of austerity to enjoy such material comforts, then he actually loses the advancement or the progress he has made by those severe austerities. That we should always remember. Just like a person who's earned a lot of money, if he keeps spending that money, then his bank balance comes down. Similarly, the yogi who has accumulated some credits by pious credits by practicing austerity, those credits will be exhausted if he uses this power of austerity to gain some material comforts. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not at all satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. One day, while Saubhari Muni who was expert in chanting mantras, was sitting in a secluded place, he thought to himself about the cause of his fall down, which was simply that he had associated himself with the sexual affairs of the fishes. He was lamenting, "Alas, while practicing austerity, even within the depths of the water, while observing all the rules and regulations practiced by saintly persons, I lost the results of my long austerities simply by associating with the sexual affairs of fishes. One should observe this fall down and learn from it." Then Saubhari Muni reflected, a person desiring liberation from material bondage must give up the association of persons interested in sex life and should not employ his senses externally in any activity. See, the mistake Saubhari Muni made was that his eyes, he engaged in seeing what was going on around him. It is said the yogi, while practicing meditation, should not completely close his eyes and should not keep his eyes widely open either. If he closes his eyes completely, there's a possibility he may go to sleep. And if he keeps his eyes wide open, then there is every possibility of distraction from external sense objects. So therefore, he closes his eyes half and he stares steadily at the tip of the nose. In this way, he is neither distracted nor does he go to sleep. So, with this realization, Saubhari Muni decided. In the beginning, I was alone and I was engaged in performing the austerities of mystic yoga. But later on, because of the association of fish engaged in sex, I decided to marry. Thus, I became the husband of 50 wives, and in each one of them I had 100 sons. And thus my family increased to 5,000 members. By the influence of the modes of nature, I have become fallen. And I thought I would be happy in material life. But now I realize that I have to become detached from material enjoyment. To renounce material association, Saubhari Muni accepted the Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. Now his devoted wives followed him, for they had no other shelter other than their husband. When Saubhari Muni, who was quite conversant with the practice of Ashtanga Yoga, went to the forest, he performed severe penances, and at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Lord. By observing their husband progress in spiritual life, Saubhari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, simply because they were faithful to their husband, who in the end of his life practiced severe austerities. The wives of Saubhari Muni also became delivered. So the example of Saubhari Muni should teach us that Ashtanga Yoga is not very easy to practice, and one has to observe all the rules and regulations very, very strictly. Otherwise, there's every possibility one will be deviated from the practice. So I'll take up some questions. Nishkamak Yoga, prescribed duties remain the same as in Sakama Yoga. So in earlier yugas, could a Kshatriya or Vaishya take up Nishkamak Yoga? How can it be possible with some prescribed duties? Now, prescribed duties are according to one's position as a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, as a Brahmachari or a Grahastha. Prescribed duties are different. So, according to one's position, formerly one would accept one would follow the Vedic directions to perform specific prescribed duties. But in Nishkama Karma Yoga, one does not desire any material gain. And in that way, desiring only self-realization, one practices yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga. Next question. How to renounce Pitri Dosha? Well, there are different kinds of dosha mentioned in the scriptures for people who want some material benefit out of practicing some vrata or performing some yajna or giving some dana. But if there is dosha, then there are recommendations how to correct that dosha or some defect, because of which one may not be able to get the desired result of performing the particular yajna or vrata or dana, whatever. So whatever be the dosha, I don't know specifically what do the scriptures say to become free from Pitri dosha. But in any case, in this Kali Yuga especially, One is advised to practice Sankirtan Yajna. By Sankirtan Yajna, all defects that may be there, which are obstacles in the path of progress in self-realization, will completely become nullified. All defects will be corrected. That is the power of Sankirtan Yajna. All sinful reactions become nullified by practice of Sankirtan Yajna. There is no need to consider specific atonement for specific sinful reactions. There is no need to consider specific practices for specific dosha if one is following the method of Sankirtan Yajna. Therefore, Sankirtan Yajna is the best way to become free from all defects. Next question: how to work without expecting or attaching ourselves to the results of our work? To not get attached to the result means to first of all understand the result doesn't belong to me. The result belongs to the Supreme Lord, because He is the ultimate proprietor of everyone and everything. Isha vasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat. Isha Vasya Upanishad says that everything in existence belongs to the Supreme Lord. Everything in existence. So, we should understand that whatever work we may do, the result belongs to the Supreme Lord. And therefore, there is no question of getting attached to the result. Now, how to work without expecting result? No, you don't have to work without expecting result. It's just that whatever be the result that one works for, results have to be in focus. Otherwise, how can you work in a proper direction? Proper way of working is to work for successfully completing the work to get the desired objective, achieve the desired objective. So it's not that one should not expect any results. One should not expect any results for oneself. That is what is told in the scriptures. Next question. Srila Prabhupada has mentioned somewhere that Brahman realization is also mental speculation. No, Brahman realization itself is not mental speculation, but people employ the method of mental speculation for Brahman realization. Brahman realization means realization of the absolute truth in the feature of Brahman. I have explained this earlier. There are three features of the absolute truth: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The highest realization, the ultimate realization of the absolute truth is realization of Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead. But Brahman realization is the beginning of the realization of the absolute truth. The method for Brahman realization is not mental speculation. What is mental speculation? One tries to imagine, or one tries to use one's mind, intelligence, or analytical abilities, or one tries to study the Vedic literature, or tries to do some austerities, penances, and in that way tries to use one's own intelligence and mind to discern the truth separate from all other known realities. So this way, mental speculation is never going to be leading to any kind of realization. So mental speculation is to be completely given up if somebody is serious about self-realization. Okay. Next question. Krishna is the origin of everything. Is there lust in Krishna too? No, there is no lust in Krishna, but Krishna is full of love. So that love, when it is reflected in this material world, it becomes lust. What goes on in the name of love in this material world is actually lust, kama. What is there in Krishna is called prema. Krishna has prema, and prema becomes kama in this material world. When we try to become independent of Krishna, when we try to enjoy independent of Krishna, then that sense of love for Krishna deteriorates, degrades into lust or kama. We'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.